Hi there, folks. Megan Thompson here with Megan Thompson Coaching. Today we're going to talk about the number one reason why verbal aggression is still happening in your home when you're parenting a sensitive kid stuck in the meltdown cycle. So I'm here to help you break out of this pattern. We've helped hundreds of families do the same thing and be able to stop the meltdown cycle in as little as 8 weeks. So let's have a conversation about what to do when your child is yelling, screaming, shut up, threats, wishing that they would die or that siblings would die, etc., and what to do about it. So here at MTC, we've helped hundreds of families break out of this pattern in as little as 8 weeks. So what I mean by that is that they have stopped the yelling, stopped the outbursts, stopped the major meltdowns. For whatever reason that our clients are coming to us, they break the cycle. And so when we think about the challenges that we've helped so many families break out of, one thing that we hear from many parents who are stuck in this meltdown cycle is that the meltdowns might not include hitting. They might not include throwing things. They might not include shutting down. Those are all behavior issues that we help parents break out of for parents of kids 3 to all the way up through 18 and end of high school years. And with that being said, today we'll focus on verbal aggression, that the yelling, the screaming, the cursing, the intense language like I hate you, shut up, this is the worst day ever. You're horrible, you're the worst mommy ever, anything like that. And hearing that out of your child's mouth, no matter their age, right? 6, 7, 9, 11, 14, 15, even 16, etc., can be really, really difficult especially if that's happening on a daily basis. So families that we work with often are stuck in this cycle. Those outbursts, the major meltdowns are happening multiple times a day, or once a day, or even multiple times a week. So much so that you as a parent are starting to feel like you're holding your breath. That in your own home you feel like you can't experience respect and safety and emotional control, and you're holding your breath, but walking on eggshells, and what we call hypervigilant, which means basically like waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting to see when your kid is going to set off. And that's no way to live for you as a parent, but it's also really important to notice what's going on for your child. And so we think about why this is happening. If your child is hitting, or if your child is screaming, the challenge is the same. And so this is really, really important for you to notice, because the cycle is the same regardless of the behavior intensity. If it's happening regularly and daily and lasting a long time, then this is incredibly important for you to pay attention to, because the meltdown cycle that you're in is not behavior specific. The meltdown cycle is frequency specific, intensity specific, duration specific, and that's what we're talking about here. So when you look at gauging the outbursts that your child is having, you might think, oh, well, at least my kid's not throwing things anymore like they did when they were 4, or at least my kid's not hitting anymore. They're just throwing their words, right? And while that is less destructive, it's still incredibly destructive to the relationship. Less physically destructive, still incredibly destructive to the relationship you have with your child and that your child has with anybody else in the home. Because many siblings can watch a sensitive kid yell, scream, freak out, have outbursts, and notice, whoa, you're talking to my mom like that. I don't like that. I would never be able to talk to my parents like that. And then we see the whole dynamic of the siblings living in that constant stress. I mean, this is the exact stress that I struggled with consistently as a sibling of a sensitive kid. My sister struggled with her language use and not being able to use safe language in the house. And so the yelling was pretty consistent and pretty persistent. And yelling wasn't appropriate or accepted in our home, and it's not developmentally appropriate for kids to yell consistently. And yet, the anger that was met with traditional parenting, didn't help us either, right? So as a parent, if you're yelling back at your kid, you've already engaged in the power struggle. You've already engaged in the lesson of shaming your child and trying to send the message to your kid that their behavior is wrong or not effective, not appropriate, when in reality what your child is learning is that they are wrong, and there's something inherently wrong with them. And so while not highly sensitive myself, I was raised in with this traditional method of you won't speak to me like that, and all of that language. And in that experience personally, we also witness how this affects, like I said, all of our clients, when that dynamic is playing out in their homes. That experience for your children, when you're responding in that way, even if it's not the way that you want to respond, is really important for you to notice, because your children are hearing, there must be something wrong with me. I'm a bad kid. And that identity that your child is assuming is obviously something that you want to take a look at, and because you'll be perpetuating that experience for your child, but also for yourself. Because it doesn't feel good as a parent to yell at your kids. And obviously, this isn't something that you want to have happen. And when we see kids who are raising their voice at their parents, this is one of the issues. Sometimes it's because parents are also yelling in the home. And it's also true that that's not always the case. You could be really significantly trying not to raise your voice, or that might not be your demeanor at all, and be very puzzled and confused as to why your child is yelling at you, since that's not a behavior that you model. And either way, your child is exhibiting a symptom of the meltdown cycle. Your whole family is dealing with the symptoms of the meltdown cycle, that this is not the behavior that you need to target, singularly and alone. There's a lot going on in the family dynamic if that's what's going on for your sensitive kid. Because, we know that sensitive children are much more empathetic than the average population. And so they are, on average, more capable of displaying that empathy and acting on that empathy when they are emotionally regulated. And so clearly, if your child is yelling at people that they love, your other children, etc., then that means that they're not capable of feeling and acting on the empathy at the same time, simultaneously. And instead, that emotional experience of being empathetic and noticing that their words hurt you just stays locked inside, and it creates a shame spiral that can be really, really difficult. We know that leads to lots of apologies, seeking reassurance, and as I mentioned here, the identity experience of feeling like a bad kid after the fact. And so this would lead to, just growing up, observing my sister writing these long apology notes of how devastatingly sad she was about herself and the decisions she would make when she would use this language at home. And, because she knew it disappointed our parents. And that's an experience that I've seen over the course of my decades plus long career as both a mental health professional as well as a parent coach consultant, that this level of guilt and frustration and aggravation within the sensitive child's experience is something that you witness too. Your kiddo might not be writing letters, which, doesn't mean that they're not thinking about it, right? They might be trying to make up for it in other apologetic ways and deferring ways. And so it's really important for you to notice, how is your child viewing their own needs, and that level of out of control behavior, right? Obviously you as a parent, you feel guilty yelling at your kid. You need to observe that your child feels guilty. Whether they can show it to you or not is a different story. Because if they're not emotionally controlled in managing negative emotions, then it's unlikely they will be able to skillfully share with you of negative emotions that are more vulnerable than anger, which is where yelling is coming from. But it doesn't mean that your child isn't feeling it. And so that's really important to break out of that misconception here. This is a skill gap, okay? Your child has a skill gap to that is keeping them in a yelling cycle, or in the meltdown cycle that includes yelling. And so when your child is missing that skill to regulate their emotions, to notice their emotions, to decrease the intensity, and to safely ask for help or to safely ask for their needs to be met in different ways, all of that capacity is then going to be met with reactivity. If your child's not able to do it. So they will have a hairpin trigger, they will have a struggle in managing, communication skills and communicating effectively. And it's important for you to notice that even if home is the only place that you see this behavior, that doesn't mean that your child isn't struggling in other community settings like school or with friends or in extracurriculars, etc. Because if your child also struggles with asking for help, advocating for their needs, speaking up for their needs, then it's important for you to notice that's actually related. Those two things are connected, and it's still an indicator of the skill gap. So what the hardest part about this, right, is the fact that this isn't your kid. Your true child is kind and caring and compassionate and loving. And so when we see our clients unlock that potential for their kids to be able to be that kind, caring, compassionate child pervasively, brings me to celebrating one of our clients recently who celebrated in our client group that her daughter received a present, and the younger, so this is a daughter who's around age 8 or 9. And the middle child loved the present. It was new clothes, and she tried to try it on. And she, she's a younger one, around age 4, and her 8-year-old highly sensitive sister was would have pre our work together would have screamed, "Get out of my clothes! Those are mine! Those are new! Get out of here!" Right? But what she did instead was say, "Hey, these are new. These are important to me." And she had a private conversation with her 4-year-old sister, honoring the fact that her 4-year-old sister loved the new clothes too. They were fun. They were fancy. And they were new. And was able to advocate for her needs without having such extreme reactivity, right? I mean, one would say that it's totally normal for an 8-year-old to not want her little sister to wear her clothes, right? I mean, that's so totally appropriate, especially brand new stuff, right? And it's also totally appropriate for a 4-year-old to be super interested in big sister's clothes and to want to wear them, right? And want to dress up like big sister and idolize her. And in that dynamic, mom did not have to explain to her 8-year-old why her little sister wanted to idolize, was demonstrating an idyllic situation here. And she also didn't need to teach in that experience that yelling was not appropriate. Instead, she was able to observe and relish in the fact that her 8-year-old was able to notice, I feel something, I have a high preference for these new things. I'm very interested in them. And so are you. And I still don't want you to touch them. I still don't want you to put them on. I want to be the one that wears them first. And that experience of watching siblings not only get along, right? Like just, exist in the same house without arguing, but rather problem solve and honor each other's needs at the same time without mom. And this mom homeschools, so she's around all the time. Without mom having to step in, without mom having to separate and, hold the two back and tell one, "Hey, don't talk to your sister like that," and tell the other, "This is your sister's stuff. You shouldn't touch it." Or say, "She's only 4," right? Like any sort of explanation in that, lots of lessons to learn and the aggravation that might cause. And yet here we have a flexible 8-year-old who doesn't need to, cry and scream to get her needs met. Instead, she's able to slow down, doesn't even need mom's help. Mom literally walked into this experience and be able to do that. How was this family able to do that? Well, mom first needed to change what her perspective of capability was with her kiddo. She needed to be able to relate to her kiddo at the same level. This is a child whose needs were often more frequently responded to by dad. Dad was, more able to relate to his highly sensitive daughter in a different way. And so mom always felt pretty disconnected to her 8-year-old. And while raising all 3 kids that she's got here, she needed, as a homeschooling parent, needed to be able to support her middle child here in managing her big emotions, so that because dad working from home needed to be able to prioritize that. And it's also true that he wasn't always available. She needed to parent and feel empowered to parent effectively. And so both parents needed to learn what their 8-year-old was capable of, right? Because part of this dynamic we see often in 2-parent households and in 1-parent households, that you as a parent, when you're stuck in noticing your kid with these big yelling, screaming fits of emotion, your child and your belief of what they're capable of can start to diminish. You can start to wonder, can my kid really handle getting new things and watching her sister be interested in it? Can my kid handle having to do work, schoolwork? Can my kid handle being able to, to watch me give attention to her sisters while I'm not supporting her and she has a need? Maybe there's something that's broken, or she needs something help with a buckle, or doesn't want to make her own breakfast, right? And that could set the whole thing off. And mom in this dynamic needed to know what her 8-year-old could be held accountable for. All of those behaviors I just mentioned are completely developmentally appropriate for an 8-year-old, highly sensitive or not, to tolerate. Making your own breakfast, following through on work assignments, doing some of that independently, or asking for help if you can't, if you need help learning, and tolerating with patience, being around and allowing your siblings to exist, being around your siblings and allowing them to exist without having a hairpin trigger for them. All of that totally appropriate for a sensitive kid to be able to handle consistently, daily, without arguments, without outbursts, without screaming, without stomping or running away or outright refusal, which is all the behaviors that this mom and dad were dealing with before we focused on what their kid was capable of. That shift in noticing the possibilities, and then also having the skills to help their kid believe themselves they could handle it. You don't have to be reactive. This doesn't have to be a fire, but doing it in a way that isn't condescending, right? Telling a kid that would obviously send them for a loop. Yes, but I am on fire right now. How dare you tell me that this isn't a big problem? Would obviously send that 8-year-old into a defense mechanism of saying, you don't get it, you don't understand. So we have to teach her playfully. You have to show her how to communicate effectively in a playful way, and do that in a way that doesn't nitpick or tackle every single thing at once. Because obviously, especially for homeschooling parents, but this is true for all parents, if you're around your kid all the time, it can be pretty easy to pay attention to where their growth edges are. If you see them all the time, right? I mean, you care about your child, you want them to grow and develop, so you will be focused on where their growth edges are. And it's also true that you got to balance that with noticing where they're already growing. And that's a heck of a lot easier to do when you have a system to help them grow. Just like teaching a kid to ride a bike, right? When you're teaching your child to ride a bike, you're going to make sure they can first stay steady on the bike. Then you're going to make sure that they can hold on to the handles and pedal and keep their eyes up, right? But first they might be looking at the pedals, and you might just keep them on the driveway so they stay steady. And then you're going to have them keep their eyes up, and then you're going to have them, move beyond the neighborhood so that, and make sure they can stop and look both ways in traffic before you would have them, consistently move forward. So how to help somebody ride a bike, then you're going to help indicate that certainty that you can help them do that, right? Your child do that. And so same thing goes for parenting a sensitive kid stuck in the meltdown cycle. You as a parent need to know that there's a step 1, a step 2, a step 3, and following that system allows you to then relax into letting your child learn. And rather than requiring them to have already learned it by now, which is where that shame comes in and the aggravation comes in, if it's difficult to be patient, which, if your other kids are getting yelled at or you're getting yelled at, it is difficult to be patient, incredibly difficult. So when we think about the important piece around this, when your child is able to see this challenge as a skill gap rather than something inherently wrong with them, and the whole family benefits from that dynamic. That they stop becoming the scapegoat. They stop becoming the only one who needs to learn. All children need to learn how to advocate for their needs safely. All children can benefit from this dynamic change, and you as parents benefit obviously as well. Not just because you're not dealing with the problem anymore, but because being on the same page and being able to communicate with a common language as parents is incredibly rewarding, and is really, really important as well. And so, in noticing immediate apology after raising voice, a child being able to slow themselves down and stop the yelling before they before they keep yelling, when if they used to scream on end for hours, that all in noticing that progress and understanding how you can help that stay systematic and improve even beyond that, where yelling doesn't even happen. Being able to do that and have that certainty that it's not a fluke is really, really important for you as a parent to notice, because and to have as a skill set that you need to be able to have, right? So we think about breaking out of that walking on eggshells pattern. When you see behavior you want from your child, it's a lot easier to honor that and to honor that growth when you know that you can help your child continue to demonstrate that behavior, compared to if you weren't following a system and rather just trying to teach your kid when they're mad about homework how to help themselves feel better about homework. Then you'd have to deal with it when they're mad at their sister when she's borrowing their clothes, and how to help her deal with that. What you're doing is having a reactive tactic-based strategy, and that's not really a strategy. It's just reactive. So when you have this freedom, you have the ability to set limits, right? You have the ability to help your kid notice that behavior is not effective, nor is it acceptable in the home. But without showing your child that it's creating exhaustion in your parenting relationship with them, without trying to, because that's a side effect of yelling and getting frustrated and being reactive. You're exhausted, you're tired, and your kid picks up on that. They're highly sensitive. So they are incredibly observant of those changes. And so when you know how to do that consistently, then you can break out of this pattern much more effectively, much faster. And the ability for your family to live a different life can happen within the course of weeks. And this is with managing all of your other priorities. Obviously, this family that I'm speaking about, they're raising 3 children. One parent is homeschooling. That means she's home all the time with them. Well, almost all the time. I mean, in this climate right now, she is home a lot. Whereas they might be hustling and bustling in other settings. But right now, there's a lot of togetherness going on, but that also can create a lot of discord, right? If you've got a pressure cooker going on in the house. So changing that dynamic obviously influences the entire family for the better. And being able to do that in under 2 months, I mean, think about where your family can be in 60 days or around there. When you fixed this problem and been able to break out of that cycle, how much different would your life be available to you, right? How much more freedom would you be able to have? Would you be able to go to parks without being embarrassed? Would you be able to take your kid to Target knowing that they weren't going to yell at you? Would you be able to observe that you could put your kid in extracurriculars or co-ops, as this family is now available to do if they want, or send them to a more traditional school setting if this is something that's important for your family, and do that knowing that that's not going to necessarily overwhelm your kid. They won't come home a boiling pot of hot water, and noticing at that point that not only are you not walking on eggshells while they're home because you have skills, but also you're able to breathe while they're not home because you know what to expect and how to handle your kids' emotions and how to help your kid handle their emotions when they come home. And that pervasive level of calm allows you to create all kinds of possibilities for your family. It can help you give more energy to your children in general. It can help you give more energy to yourself as a parent. It can help you give more energy to your career, perhaps. We've seen many families benefit in their professional lives because they're not showing up like zombies to work anymore. Or draining themselves at work and then having zero energy, and so the parent guilt shows up at work, at home. So all of this is there's a rejuvenating experience that is available to you when you break out of this pattern that you might not be considering how pervasive this problem actually is. Which is why it's important for us to cover that here at MTC. Our job here, our mission here, is to support parents of sensitive kids and break out of that so that the suicidal thoughts and self-harmful thoughts of sensitive children who grow up in chronically invalidating home don't perpetuate. Our job here is to stop that cycle, and we want to be able to do that for highly sensitive kids around the world. And in order to do that, we need to help you break out of that pattern now and notice that it's an urgent pattern, because this is what happens when kids struggle and they think that they are not good enough, or that they can't measure up to their parents. It's incredibly difficult to feel capable of solving your problems as a child when your parents don't believe in you. And that could be because your parents are saying that to you. It could be because that comes out in a lecture, in the energy from a lecture, or it could be because this is how you perceive the relationship, because it just feels really hard on a daily basis. And for sensitive kids, that is there's a much quicker trajectory. We see 0 to 60 in intensity of emotion. There's also a 0 to 60 in intensity of thoughts going on for sensitive kids, and so highly sensitive kids are much more quick to run to the belief, automatic thought that life would be better off without them. And so when we're focusing on stopping the cycle before it gets there, or as it's getting there, but before it ends up towards action, this is incredibly important. It's one of our specialties here at MTC, and it's something that not many professionals have a specialty on. So it to me is my duty to discuss this with you and our audience, because many people will think that is a bit doomsday to say, and I'm okay if you get mad at me for that, because it's the experience I experienced in my personal life. It's the experience I've experienced in my professional life for a decade plus, and at this point I should probably start counting the years beyond that decade, but whatever. And so for you to notice, when we think about having that expertise in treating suicidal thoughts, treating self-harm, oftentimes the myth is that children are immune to it, or they don't really say what they mean. But the research is consistent that children who discuss death as an option actually know more about that being an option, and know more about the permanency of death than adults give them credit for. So it's really important that we look at the verbal aggression going on in your home and take it seriously now. Because even if your child has stopped hitting, it doesn't mean that you're out of the woods in breaking out of this pattern. And so, like I said, it's not just about breaking out of this pattern and stopping that behavior. It's about noticing what's possible when that behavior isn't even a factor in your life anymore. Picking up and going to Target, and then going to the park, and then going to a friend's house for dinner. All three of those things doesn't have to be overstimulating to the point where your kid is drained at the end of the day and you're worried about how they'll behave. Instead, they manage all day long, and they have a blast. And that's the go-to everyday life that our clients are able to experience. But then you get to think about that on a more global scale. What does that mean for you when everyday life is your possibility, and the normalcy of that? Then you get to notice, what else is possible. Do you get to pick up and go for 2 weeks on a family cross-country trip? Or do you get to, change your career and add a little variety to that, because you're not scrambling with the inconsistencies of your child's behavior at home, because now you can tackle new challenges. And then what that allows for your family in terms of possibility as well. So all sorts of different ways for you to think bigger and dream bigger that we want you to be focused on, and obviously noticing how to tackle the problem now rather than waiting to see if your child can grow out of it is incredibly important and to do at this point. So if you're ready to break out of this pattern and you're ready to start dreaming bigger and start noticing what's available for your family, rather than focused on what your kid can and can't do today, then I encourage you to book a call with our team. Have a conversation with us. Break down the problem that you're having, where you're stuck and what you've been stuck with recently with parenting your sensitive kid. And then talk about what your goals are. We always ask our clients, what are your big picture dreams? And, some families need some encouragement in that, but you won't be able to fix this problem if you're not dreaming big, because a light at the end of the tunnel, just going to Target, is, as much as that's a great store, is not really why we live our lives, right? We live our lives for possibility, for enjoyment, for joy, for spontaneity, for connection, for happiness, and for fun events. And being able to do that whenever we want, however we want, and is really something that every family deserves, because nobody was put on this earth to be miserable, and it's pretty miserable to feel stuck in the confines of your own house. Because of a relationship issue in the home, and this is what's available to you to break out of. So I encourage you to think about that. I encourage you to notice where you might have lost hope, and hear the stories of our clients and the challenges that they've had, and how they've broken out of it so much quicker than one might assume is possible. And that could be very possible for your family as well. Once we discuss your challenges and your goals, and if we think that what we can do here at MTC is going to be a good fit, my team member that you'd speak to on the phone will tell you exactly how that works and how to do it right away. And in doing that, you'll be able to take immediate action, because there's no time like the present to actually make a decision and to solve the problem. And we'll be able to do that. And then if it's not a fit, if I feel like, if our team members feel like what you're dealing with, what you're struggling with isn't our specialty here at MTC, we tell you exactly how to fix the problem differently, because it's really important for us here at MTC that we serve families that we know we can serve. That fulfills us, that lights us up. It also, being an expert allows us to, be able to get really good at what we do, rather than trying to learn, all kinds of different angles of life circumstances. We've done that in different parts of our careers, which has allowed us to become specialists in this area, and we prefer to stay that way. So happy to make sure that anybody that we speak to knows exactly what the right fit is, whether that's with us here at MTC or not. And you would book a call at meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk, or meganthompsoncoaching.com/teen talk if you're parenting a teen who is high school age and over. We'd have that conversation with you and your teen to slow it down, right? To slow down the intensity, to break out of the pattern of intensity, so that you can then grow and speed up in growing in joy and happiness and enjoyment and that spontaneity with your family.